Hey Relationals, Sterling Lujan here, Psychologic Anarchist, where we are trying to build and create more compassionate and loving anarchist communities. Last time I discussed the mission statement and the direction in which this particular vlog is going to go. And one of the main things that I discussed the very first time and in the mission statement was this idea of psychiatry being a detrimental institution and being an agent for breaking down our relationships and our abilities to relate with one another. Right now, I want to sort of continue on the trajectory of looking at psychiatry and explaining why psychiatry is such a destructive practice. Now, Psychiatry Defined is just the analysis and the diagnosing of mental illnesses, mental disease, or mental disorders. The right out of the gate, the very first problem with mental illness or mental disorder, quote unquote, is that it's a nonsensical construct. It is a term or an idea that doesn't make any sense. Now, usually, as soon as I utter these words, somebody will be, oh, you don't believe in mental illness, so you're just stigmatizing people who really suffer. So that's what I want to do first. I want to get this idea out of the way that I am attacking people who suffer from the problems of living or from any type of environmental situations they're dealing with or dealing with family or relationship troubles. I want to really do away with this idea that I don't care about these people or that I'm producing stigma or trying to stigmatize any certain individual. I know that people suffer. I know that people have different types of problems, different types of issues, and those issues manifest in different ways. Some people may manufacture symptoms of hearing voices, seeing things. Others may become depressed. Some people might have mood swings. And all of these different quote-unquote symptoms are the unique or specialized ways that people deal with their problems of living, their relationship problems, and their interior worlds. Now, I contend that it's not me or anyone else who's saying that mental illness or mental disease is a nonsense concept are stigmatizing agents. I don't think that people who don't believe in these concepts are the ones that are stigmatizing people who have issues. I think that it's psychiatry. It is industrial psychiatry. It is psychiatrists. It is a lot of psychologists and different people in the mental counseling and mental health fields that are doing the stigmatizing. Whenever anybody is labeled with something that they consider a disease, with something that they consider makes their brain malfunction or broken, well, now those ideas are what stigmatize people. Psychiatrists stigmatize people. Mental health professionals stigmatize people. Anybody who tries to say that somebody's brain is broken because they exhibit certain behaviors or they think a certain way or they overly emote or have a problem dealing with their emotions, and now that they're diseased or sick, now that is stigmatizing people. What I'm offering in this notion that the psychiatric concept of mental illness is bunk is a very positive idea, and it's positive in the sense that people aren't eternally sick. People are not, their brains are not broken. They don't have any type of diseases. They're not malfunctioning, and they're not people who are dead to us. So this, to me, is a very positive, very forward-looking idea of this notion of mental illness. So let's delve into the term some more and really look at why it doesn't make any sense. So when someone says mental illness or mental disorder, what does that mean? Okay, mental refers to the mind or mentation. It's the way that it's thought processes. It's the way that people think. So how can the way that people think or thought processes, which is essentially an abstraction, how can that be diseased? How can that be sick? So here's the issue. A disease is an abnormality in structure or function of a body, of a tissue, or of an organ, of some physical component of the body system. So that here's an issue right out of the gate. A mind, in this sense, in the biological notion of disease, cannot be sick. An abstraction cannot be sick. It can only be sick, as Dr. Thomas Sawes said, in a metaphorical fashion. So essentially, when a psychiatrist or a mental health professional claims that somebody has a mental disorder or a mental disease, they are giving their subjective valuation or their feeling about someone being sick. It's not based on any type of objective measures. It's not based on any type of blood test. All it's based on is on how they feel and what psychiatry has deemed to be behaviors that are not accepted in society or are different or vary from the norm. Now, when we talk about these mental disorders or mental diseases in terms of psychiatry, psychiatry uses the DSM, or the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, in order to make these diagnoses. And the DSM is essentially a subjective guide that uses behavioral symptomatology to look at people and make assertions about the state of their mind, or the state of the notion that their brain is broken. And without getting into a long-winded and very wordy discussion of the DSM, we already know that the DSM as a diagnostic manual its validity is in question, because there's been tons of so-called mental disorders like homosexuality that have been thrown out because they weren't actually diseases. They were just things that people didn't like about other people, right? Homosexuality was considered a huge taboo for a long time, but now it's a social justice warrior fan favorite. But without digressing too much, obviously the DSM does not harbor anything that we can look at under a microscope and say, there's the germ, there's the lesion, there is the disease. So mental illness in this regard is nothing but an opinion from these individuals that sit in the ivory tower. Now, a lot of you guys are probably wondering, well, what about all the evidence that mental illness is a disease? What about all the biological evidence? This is where things can get really thick, because there's a lot of information out there about the alleged neurological problems that cause mental illness. So what I'll do here is just start with the primary one. In more episodes later, we can talk about other issues, but the primary, say for instance in depression, the primary alleged cause of depression is this notion that a chemical imbalance exists. This is called, in the literature, it's called the bioamine theory of depression, which just means that serotonin, which is the primary neurotransmitter that's involved in mood, sleep-wake cycle, and other common human functioning, if this is out of whack in the brain, then a person is allegedly depressed. Here's the problem with that. As I mentioned, that there's no direct way that a clinician, that a psychiatrist in the office can measure levels of serotonin. There's no blood test, there's no urine test, there's no direct measure. Some people have said that serotonin levels can be measured in the urine or in the blood, but here's the problem. Neurological serotonin does not pass the blood-brain barrier, so there's no way that neurological serotonin can be in the urine or in the blood. If there are these metabolites of serotonin in the blood or in the urine, it's from other parts of the body. So how have psychiatrists measured levels of serotonin? There was only one way they were able to measure the metabolites. And when I say metabolite, that is just the waste product or the transformed original product as is removed from the body. So serotonin's metabolite is called 5-HIAA, and it collects in the cerebral spinal fluid at the back of the head area here. And the research that's been done, researchers have taken this metabolite out of this part of the brain, the cerebral spinal fluid, and they have measured it in depressed populations and they have measured it in healthy, quote unquote, populations. All the research on this has not fleshed out whether there is an actual, or whether depression actually exists from the control group to the experimental group. The research hasn't fleshed out, without a doubt, that the metabolites levels are lower in the depressed populations. And if anybody's wondering where I get this information from, they can look at Elliot Wallenstein's book, Blaming the Brain. He discusses this at some length. And then Robert Whitaker's book, Anatomy of an Epidemic, he discusses this material at length also. Very important. And that brings me to another point. When it comes, even if they somehow could, even if psychiatrists somehow could analyze these chemicals, these metabolites, and then come to a conclusion about their levels in relation to depression, they still have no clue what a baseline level of serotonin would look like. And all that means is they don't know what a normal or healthy level of these compounds is. And that is likely because it varies from individual. No two brains are alike. The networking, the neural networks are different. The variations in chemicals are different. The thought processes that people have are different, which all changes and causes reactions in the brain. So there's no way that they could determine this, even if they could accurately determine levels of these chemicals in the brain. So this is give you a little bit to think about why this concept of mental illness or mental disorder is a nonsensical concept based on psychiatrists and culture, people and cultures, subjective valuations as to why people are sick. So again, this is not me attempting to stigmatize anybody. This is not me attempting to say that, no, you're not, nothing's wrong with you, and you're not suffering whatsoever, or that you're lying, that you're malingering, you're feigning this. That's not me at all. I perfectly understand that people have problems with living, and their problems manufacture or manifest in different ways. I'm just saying that there is hope for you because you're not permanently sick. There are ways that different people can help you. Counseling can help you. There are ways that you can look inside yourself and work with your issues, work with the way that you deal with problems. And hopefully over the course of the next few episodes, we can delve into this idea a little bit more of coming to terms with personal problems, relational issues, etc. Well, I think I've discussed enough for now. I would love for you guys to subscribe to the Psychologic Anarchist YouTube channel down here below. Just click the subscribe button. And also like the Facebook page, Psychologic-Anarchist. And like I said before, you guys bear with me. I'm new to creating YouTube content, but I'm really enjoying this. I really love talking about this stuff. And hopefully one day we can do maybe a Blab or a Google Hangout, and we can all discuss this material in further depth. Thank you.